Hello, everyone. It's August 8th. Wow, how did we get to August? This week's topic is slow crafting is a revolutionary act. And I'll tell you how I came up with this idea over the last few weeks. I have been busy. Summer is classically 120-ish days of really trying to cram in as much as you can before the snow starts to fall. And we've had glorious days the last few weeks, mid-80s, cooling off at night. But there are signs that summer is already starting to come to an end. A couple of leaves are turning yellow on the trees. Here on the 45th parallel in northern Michigan, the daylight hours are shrinking a little bit, and my garden is getting to the peak blooms of summer and starting what I call the late summer or early fallish blooms, like the autumn joy sedum. Looks like it has blooms that are starting to form. My garden phlox is at its peak. Overall, it's been fabulous, though, as I have been so busy. But this week I got really tired. So since I talked to you last, we went to the Willow Run Air Show, and it's near Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area, outside of Detroit. And the air quality lightened up, and the clouds went away enough for us to have the show that we paid for. They did have to cancel the day before show. And the thing about it is we had bought really expensive VIP tickets with catered meal and something because I really can't tolerate sitting outside much. And it was lovely seats, but no rain checks. If the weather's bad, you're just out that money. So it was great. We saw all kinds of planes, vintage planes, and different types of air demonstrations. That was a lot of fun. And I got back, and I was a little bit tired from that weekend, so I kept working on my crochet afghan. I loaded another quilt on the frame, and I was working on the paper lanterns quilt top that I've been doing for the Quilt Guild Challenge. I still have been working on my commonplace book with stickers and collecting quotes, but I started to feel tired, and I'm like, whoa. Last weekend was a trip to Dublin, Ohio. They have a large Irish festival. I mean, 100,000 people is what they estimated to be there. And I don't know, probably 6 or 7 stages of music and presentations. They had a culture tent. They had craft tent. They had music workshop tents. It was so big. I only saw part of it because I got tired walking. I did the record number of steps I've done in a day. I was over 10,000, and it was a lot of walking for me. And I chose to watch some of the Highland Games and listen to the music tent next door. And it was a lot of fun. These tents are so large. This one had a Tron outside, so their people couldn't all fit inside the tent. I could hear the music from where I was sitting, and I could watch Tron. It was great. I walked up to the artisan area and bought a lovely tile with a ceramic tile with a Irish theme of the Trinity swirls, and it's in beautiful greens and beiges. Oh, I love it. And I also went to the area where I took a interactive demonstration class with a shuttle on tatting, and it was so good. The teacher, her name is Eunice. She had all kinds of her work on display. I really was inspired. Once I got going with the tatting and her showing me how to do it there was me and about 5 people at my table. But believe it or not, this workshop was full. It was full of people. And they were all trying out tatting. It is a form of lace making that came to North America and with Irish immigrants in the 30s. They picked it up. Now, it's one of the oldest form of lace making. She said that they even found lace in tombs of Egyptian mummies. So this has been around for a long time. Fishermen used a lot of the same knots, and lace making was North American during the early 19th century and picked up for a lot of people to make some extra money in the 30s. I know one of my great-grandmothers is a similar story to her great-grandmother and grandmothers who would tat lace for hankies and my grandma pillowcases for a little extra money during the Depression. The thing about tatting, it is very slow. It is very tedious and a lot of work, but it is so meditative and zen once you get going with it. So I opted to not stay for the knitting demonstration because I already know how to knit and I'm pretty confident with that. And I was able to take in all kinds of music and different things that were happening around the festival. It's very big, but I would highly recommend if you want to go to a very large Irish Celtic festival. They have all kinds of things. I even was able to sit down and listen to the storytelling. And the storytellers would tell historic stories. Like the one I went to was a story of how someone left Ireland and came to North America and was reading from their diary. And it was very insightful because I always knew why people left Europe to come to America, but it was really interesting to hear this personal story. It wasn't an uplifting story, but it was a good thing to hear and to understand what happened to people during that time period. So I came back from that festival and was even more tired. So what have I gravitated to this week? That was actually the last couple weeks that were more relaxing, zen, and meditative. Well, I jumped on the fad of buying a 1-inch paper punch. And then I'm going through different papers and junk mail, especially with the thick postcards, but not too thick. And I was just punching out all kinds of fussy cut colors and prints and things that looked interesting. And I've made about 3 pages in my notebook of just gluing the tiles down, the little squares, the 1-inch squares, into like mosaics and making interesting layouts. And it's fun. It's getting a little messy. I used a glue stick and a journal and no writing, no coloring, no painting, and just stuck it on. Now, you can go a little deeper into this. There is a person on Instagram, and they have notebooks on Amazon, journals that you can buy that have it sorted by shape of the stamp, the size of the stamp. The pages are pre-printed and laid out to where you can follow a theme like yellow or travel or anything like that. And I'm not buying one of those notebooks right now, but the shape of the stamps are interesting because you can get hexagon, you can get some that look like postage stamps, and I find this a very satisfying way of what they're calling junk journaling. That's not easy to say. It is the Paper Hive Daily. Don't you love that music? And if you look up their account, you can find them both on Amazon and Instagram to see what I'm talking about. It's really quite fascinating and instant gratification. So I've leaned toward doing those. I also decided to put away the granny square cardigan because I need to make more squares. It doesn't quite fit. It's a little tight or under the arms and around the back through the abdomen. So I need to put another row of squares on it, and I got tired of it, so I needed to put it away. I have not touched the quilt. And I've only long-armed a few rows on the quilt that I loaded a couple weeks ago, but good news is I think I only have 2 rows left. It's not a real big quilt. And then I decided to just find something that's just super meditative and easy, low decision making, because I felt tired, brain tired, body tired. And I pulled out my slow stitching kits from Heitor Sariaba, who I took a class from in April when I went to AQS in Paducah. And these kits are panels that are meant to be stitched. There is a printed, it's a stamped printed on the linen, and you stitch the image and then you embellish the pages. It's a slow stitch type of project, which many slow stitchers don't necessarily have patterns. They're kind of more free form. And then you embellish it with snippets of fabric and lace and other embroidery, mark making. It's like collage journaling meets fabric fiber arts. I love it. I've been doing this now for a couple of weeks, and I'm almost done with the kit. Well, halfway done with the kit. And then I need to embellish the pages more before I assemble my little fabric book together. So I'll be very excited about that and let you know that slow stitching, cross stitch, things that are low level of decision making sometimes are the best things to do when your body, mind, and spirit is tired. Crocheting granny squares is another thing that I really enjoy. But I came to the conclusion that doing this is revolutionary. And let's talk about why. In a world that constantly is asking us, and me specifically, to hurry, to produce, to accomplish, consume, and then move on to the next thing, that fear of missing out, I was choosing to slow down and create something very slow with my hands, which is part of a worldwide community now of hand stitching, hand creating. Even quilting with a sewing machine, there is a lot of slow hand work. And this can be revolutionary because it is counter to the culture. It's counterculture. I mean, we are asked to do so much of being optimized, production-based, productivity-based. Everything has a system. And don't get me wrong, systems work, but not everything has to be a system all the time. What if we stopped hurrying? I started thinking, when did my hobbies become another thing that I needed to finish, that I needed to get done, that I'm behind? So finished projects are always a high for me. When you finish something, it's like, this turned out, or it's not great, but it's done. Then it comes a little bit of a period of like, well, what should I do now? Or maybe I have 5 other things lined up and I pick them up. I really enjoy finishing a quilt, but I'm stagnant right now. I have many waiting to be bound. I'm working through my stash, and it was great when I had it whittled down to just the things that I were working on. And then a friend of mine passed away, and I got all of her stash and her friend's stash. And it's been years of managing that, giving it away, making things, donating it. And I'm now getting it down to a reasonable working stash. Then it was about taking the greatest pictures of these things so that I could share them on Instagram. I was learning all the new techniques, especially in quilting. And then I see things like the mosaic projects and the fad of, wow, this is a great thing. Do you remember in 2026 when we all did those mosaic grids? Okay, let me go back into quilting. Do you remember when types of things, when Civil War quilts were like the thing? It was the pinnacle of quilting. It was the fad of a season. And then tulip pink stuff came out and was counterculture to all of that. And on and on and on. Then it became posting about everything online. And I was influenced by influencers. No kidding, that's their job. And then I was trying to get hits and likes and growing this, maybe taking it to, quote, the next level. Because even the things that brought me joy started to feel like another job, a to-do list. It started out to be something fun, creative, and a puzzle to figure out. But then I began to join the lots of consumption and then producing a little bit of content on a low level. This last couple of weeks, I decided that maybe slow crafting isn't about accomplishing less and being more sitting around and resting and doing nothing, because I can't. If I'm doing nothing, I'm doing something, usually like watching TV or doom scrolling, and I want to get off of that. But maybe this is really about experiencing more of the making process. I started to think about, do I remember when I made my first quilt? Did I remember the first cross stitch? Embroideries, how excited I was, how immersed in the process I was. And then I really felt the need to make more. I needed to express myself through creativity, and I turned a lot of the crafting projects in my life probably in my early to mid-20s when I got married and started having children, because I wasn't able to devote as much time to music. I did that in school and through college. I still dabbled on the side in playing in orchestras and things like that, but I did not have as much time to devote in hours of my day, because that's really what it took. Then the productivity culture enters the craft room for me. I started really digging into organizing my life because I was a working mom with young children. I turned to the Fly Lady for advice, and I love the Fly Lady still. But I was really caught up in what was really pushed on nurses in the 90s and early 2000s: time management, productivity, seeing more patients, generating more billable codes. And that translated to my craft room. I was like finishing up my UFOs, burning through the stash, going through every challenge. Does this sound familiar from my quilt guild? I love challenges. I love a good challenge, but not all the challenges. Learning another technique, making something for each season that I was in, learning the basics of photography and editing so that I could have pretty pictures online, posting it, sharing it, the next post, and it went on. There's nothing wrong with this until it becomes too much. I was too much in the getting it done. How much was I posting? Was I posting daily and getting caught up in all of that versus what happened to making it more fun and exciting and learning and just the Zen process of making, the flow state. I still get caught up. I love a good quilt along or stitch along. I love it when new patterns and new fabric lines come out, but I've really learned to reel it in because somewhere along the line, I realized this was marketing. Look at Lori Holt. I could never do all of her project in a lifetime that's in her books and her patterns. And I was watching all of Fat Quarter Shop's lives and getting really, really into all the new things. And I realized, stop. I can't do all of this. And stop. I don't need a side hustle at this stage in my life. I don't need to make extra money long arming for other people or designing patterns and making quilts to publish in magazines for money and a side hustle small business to try to turn it full time led to burnout. I read a funny meme where it said, I gave up my full-time job and bought all of the materials for my business to make $40 this month. That's really what my experience was. But what does slow crafting really mean when you start thinking about it? So I really spent time, especially in some of the teaching over the last year, about meditative quilting, meditative processes. So it's really how we are approaching this making, this creative time. It's really sacred, to be honest. It's a time where you just knit a few rows without worrying about how many rows I'm going to get done today so that the project is done by this deadline. It's not about sewing like a madwoman in the late at night to make sure that I'm done before the next clue is revealed in the mystery quilt or the next week in the quilt along because I became so busy. That's not slow crafting and meditation. It's approaching it, and when you have a few minutes, 5, 10, you can pick it up and put it down. Maybe you have more time. That's awesome. But spending it going, wow, how beautiful is this thread? I love these colors, touching the fabric, feeling it, looking at the layout, looking at the pattern. I love the smell of working with fabric or yarn or needlework and the sound of my sewing machine humming along in the background, the clicking of my knitting needles, the constant steady pulling of thread through fabric, in and out. It's very meditative. You know, we don't always have to be producing either. Maybe it's a day of winding yarn, pressing your fabrics out, cutting out a few pieces, or just thinking about your project, because that's really all part of the creative process too. You know, I really, really know that the process is really what counts. It's the journey, not the destination. I could see that I needed to slow down and feel satisfied. And it came during the process where I could feel the satisfaction, the pride, and inspiration come back. We talked at last podcast about creating time and space, but I think it's worth mentioning briefly here that slow crafting means intentionally making room in our lives for creativity. I have to make room in my life for exercise. I have to make room in my life for chores. I have to make room in my life for work, taking care of myself, keeping appointments. We also need to make an appointment with ourselves, and mine is in the evening after dinner. It's better if it's uninterrupted. It's better if you have maybe your family, your partner with you. I can do slow stitching and still have a show on and just take my time. But there are times also when I need to make an appointment with myself, and maybe it's going away for a retreat. I've never done that, but I'm going to one day. Maybe it's joining the local quilt guild and meeting during open sew time for 3 hours just to work on your project. Being around other people, chatting, hearing the buzz of everyone working on their projects, or a few of them are hand stitching in the background. It's okay. It's co-working with people, chatting, learning what they're doing in their lives, and yet you're still working. And it's best if there's no phone for me. There's no laundry. There's no housework. There's no one asking me, like your children, remember when they'd say, "Where is this? Can I have this snack?" There's no feeling that I need to be somewhere else. That's what Quote Guild does for me. There's 3-4 hours of sewing. Then we have our meeting and show and tell. And that's the other part that's super fun, is that we're sitting around tables, we're stitching, we're talking, we're laughing, we're admiring each other's work. And that's where we're building a community in my local community. It's fun to have online communities that do the same, but it doesn't feel as connected to me. Parts of slow crafting also means that we need a space in the calendar, but we need a space in our homes. Maybe it's our chair. Maybe you're lucky and have a little room for sewing or crafting. Because, we can't wait until everything else is finished. Like all of the dishes are done. Everything at work is done. It's never finished. Much like crafting, right? The things we make, our art projects, they're not always finished. They're usually work in progress all the time. And we have to pick and choose when we need to take time away from work and productivity and time for ourselves and making the appointment, the time and space to make. During that few hours a week, creativity isn't wasted time. We talked about the guilt of sometimes making and crafting, but it is really part of our self-care ritual because creativity and inspiration needs space to grow, space to breathe, and find that we have to exercise it just as much as we exercise our body. Why do I call slow crafting revolutionary? Because when I opened, did we not talk about faster, more, newer, better, optimize it, monetize it, share it, move to the next thing, take a picture, put it on social media, FOMO, build it up, affiliate links, make money? No, it's not what this is about. Because all of the culture that I am in is about be distracted, buy more, buy way more than you need, be online, be always available online, answer the comments, likes, subscribes, all of those things. Then a maker quietly says, time out. I'm not going to participate with that. I'm going to sit over here and I'm going to make one stitch, one block, one row at a time if you quilt. One stitch at a time for many of my other fiber arts. One stroke, one paint color, one at a time, and the portrait is finished or the collage is done. See, there's something wonderfully rebellious about creating something that doesn't need to be anything except satisfying to me. It doesn't need to be efficient. It doesn't need to be profitable. It doesn't need to be impressive. And like many of my projects, it doesn't need to be finished. 100% done, shiny. Wrap it up in a beautiful wrapping paper or put it in a bag with bow on top. Sometimes the value in my making and my projects is simply in the experience of making it. I am not good at collage. I am not good at knitting or crocheting. I'm not great at tatting, and quilt making is probably where I spend most of my time. I am not the best piecer. I am not the best long armor, but what I do makes me happy. My time doesn't have to produce something measurable to have value. It doesn't have to have a monetary amount set to it. This is the revolution. I don't use what I have always. So you can upcycle because I don't have to go buy it. Let me repeat that. I said it wrong. The revolutionary idea is that you don't have to consume and buy new on everything. I use up what I have. And then maybe go buy one thing, one color to make it work. I like upcycling junk mail. Keep it out of the landfill for a while and make it into journals. It's a type of therapy. Trade more. I give fabric away. I trade colors of yarn or fabric or stash. I donate. See, what I don't use, I can find a place for it. And I can take it to a donation center if I don't know anyone in person who would like some of the things that I have. I really look to someone in history who I find rather fascinating, and it's William Morris, because he embraced this idea that we want to find beauty, utility, and human dignity in everyday items and everyday handmade things. Beauty was accessible for everyone. You know, those chairs from the Craftsman movement, wallpaper, glass, Art Nouveau, my favorite, because handcrafted items usually is a lasting product. Our projects a lot of times will last longer than us. Something that the tatting instructor said is that tatted lace is very, very durable and is handed down from generation to generation. And I went, yeah. I have 3 generations worth of tatted lace in a drawer. Some of it I took off the garment. Some of it is still on the cotton that it was sewed on. And the lace is not fragile. The fabric is. So I could take it off and sew it on something modern. The other thing is that art challenges power. It reshapes how people see the world. It's a voice for the oppressed. It breaks old rules. It sees new truths. And it's also part of social change. Art always has been. Craft has been too. So this week I did a slow stitch, and the printed design was an anchor. And I thought, what do I want an anchor for in my linen book? But then I realized crafting is an anchor to the present moment, especially when you do it as the slow stitching, meditative, intentional way. Creating gives us an anchor in this present moment. Involve all of our senses. We feel the fabric beneath our fingers, the yarn moving through our hands when we knit, the beautiful thread in our fingers, whether it's slick like silk and soft and pliable, or spun to being shiny and smooth like a lot of embroidery flosses are. How beautiful colors are sitting next to each other, the repetitive movement of stitching, cutting, sewing, repeat. For a while, attention comes back to where we want it to be, what's happening right in front of us. The one stitch, one square, one row at a time. I find that creating helps me slow down enough for a few minutes. Then I notice what's happening in life again. What's happening around me? What do the clouds look like? What does the air smell like? Rain? Fire? Fall? Spring? Sometimes beauty is already there. Peace is already here. It's right here in my room. It's right here in my hands. I found a little account that specializes on doing neurographic art, where you take a black pen and just make a squiggle on the page and then you color in the spaces. It's very, very meditative. It can be very beautiful, but it doesn't really matter what's the end result. It was the process. I like to involve all my senses when I do every project because it really does make me feel good. I am proud of what I did. It refreshes my memory sometimes. I'll think about, oh yeah, tatting. Do you remember that lace my grandma made? Which can bring good memories. This quilt reminds me of one that so-and-so had. This quilt reminds me of this time in my life. This crocheted blanket that I made was because I'm replicating one my grandma did or was in fashion during this time with my modern twist. All of these things is that it anchors us to this moment, and it can anchor our memories too. I also want to talk about unfinished projects deserve love because we talk to them like they're failures, and they're not. It's evidence that we worked on something. Sometimes we need to stop a project and go no further because we learned what we needed to learn. Sometimes my interests change a lot. Life changes. Sometimes we put something away for years and then suddenly can't wait to work on it again. And I have one of those projects. And what I realize is maybe this project is simply a project where the story isn't finished yet. And if you followed me long enough, during lockdown, I started Dear Jane. I was locked, we were all at home. We couldn't go to work. My job as a nurse, I was an office nurse and I worked from home. And my boss protected me because she knew I was ill and had immune problems already, and that if and when I caught COVID, it would be devastating. So I started Dear Jane, a very difficult quilt that Jane Stickley started during the Civil War, and she finished it during the Civil War. It says wartime, 1863, stitched in how many thousands of hundreds, 1,700 maybe pieces in it. It's the most tedious, most complicated, and original quilt I've ever seen. So I thought, I have a book. There's no directions in how to do it, but line drawings and an EQ. So I started my journey, and then I got sick. I couldn't remember how to quilt when I was done with COVID because I was left with memory problems and other neurological problems that still bother me. But see, the story for Jane isn't finished, my Dear Jane. Yes, it's in a box. I've pulled it out. I've looked at it. I got overwhelmed. Put it back over the last few years. But now I think I'm ready to pull it out again. I've learned a lot between now and then. And I don't know if I'm going to do the entire quilt, but I would like to do the center blocks. And maybe I will take it a little different. Maybe some of the blocks will be hand stitched. Maybe some of the blocks will be appliqued using wool. Maybe it will be embroidery. But I don't know because its story isn't finished yet. I want to end by encouraging you to try a slow crafting hour to kick off your time. Listeners, please find time in your days. If you can't pick an hour, I like to pick an hour on Saturdays and Sundays. And after work, I usually wind up spending an hour on my projects. But a lot of times it's 15 minutes at a time, 5 minutes at a time, one seam, a couple of stitches. And I really use it as a meditative process, not hurrying. Don't worry about trying to get it finished. Don't worry about deadlines and pictures and posting. We don't have to be influencers of anyone but our own mental health, wellness, and creating beauty for our homes, or maybe family, or gifts to our friends who deeply are loved by us that we would want to share. I want us to notice the materials. Notice your hands working, the colors, the thoughts. How do you feel when making this? And when you are making, instead of doing the mistakes that I did earlier, like, oh my gosh, this is taking too long. I'm never going to make any money at it if I take this much time. I have to go faster. I need to optimize this. I need the shortcuts. What are the easy tips? Ask myself different questions, not the what did I get done and when is this going to be finished? Ask, how do I feel when I'm making this? There's also interesting studies out there that talk about how crafting and making and art makes us feel, and it's good for us. And I thought sometimes instead of being into how I feel about things so much, maybe I should check things like, what's my pulse before and after? What about checking my blood pressure before and after? Making calms people and is helpful in that. It helps with overall well-being. Did I snack? Nah, less, because sometimes I'm a snacker and I'm trying to eat less. Did I stop grabbing my phone as much? These are all very easily measured ways to see if you're wasting your time or feeding your soul. Have a wonderful week, and I hope that you take time every day to work on something beautiful, to notice the beauty in your home. We do not need to be obsessed with speed. We can be revolutionary and radical by slowing down and being meditative, and take those calendars and write some appointments for ourselves to meet ourselves in the craft space, the craft realm, our craft chair. Protect it. Protect that time. Because crafting isn't really about stitching slowly. It's about giving us permission to be present in the making. We don't need to make more always. I realized that when I stopped at 100 when counting the quilts up in my storage room. I need to experience more of the making. Let's get out of our hands, off the internet. Let's repeat that. I said it wrong and backwards. Let's get out of our heads, off the internet, and into our hands. Let's stop thinking about it and do something, even if it's badly.